I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I am a man at war, and I am fighting for all of the broken people, all of the people thrown overboard. They always try to shame us, but they don't speak the language. No, we're not nameless, we're not faceless, we were born for greatness.
The Branch Davidians, also known as the Branch, were a religious group that originated in 1955 from a schism in the Shepherd's Rod Davidians, following the death of their founder, Victor Hotef. Hotef founded the Davidians based on his prophecy of an imminent apocalypse involving the second coming of Jesus Christ and the defeat of the evil armies of Babylon. As the original Davidian group gained members, its leadership moved the church to a hilltop several miles east of Waco, Texas, which they named Mount Carmel, after a mountain in Israel mentioned in Joshua 19:26 in the Bible's Old Testament. A few years later, they relocated again to a much larger site east of the city. In 1959, Victor's widow, Florence, announced that the unexpected Armageddon was about to take place, and members were told to gather at the center to await the event. Many of them built houses, others stayed in tents, trucks, or buses, and most of them sold their possessions. After the failure of this prophecy, control of the site of Mount Carmel fell to Benjamin Roden, founder of the Branch Davidian Seventh-day Adventist Association, or the Branch Davidians. He promoted different doctrinal beliefs than those of Victor Hotef's original Davidian Seventh-day Adventist organization. On Roden's death, control of the Branch Davidians fell to his wife Lois. Lois considered their son, George Roden, unfit to assume the position of prophet. Instead, she groomed Vernon Wayne Howell, later known as David Koresh, to be her successor. In 1984, a meeting resulted in a division of the group, with Howell leading one faction, calling themselves the Branch Davidians, and George Roden leading the competing faction. After this split, George Roden ran Howell and his followers off Mount Carmel at gunpoint. Howell and his group relocated to Palestine, Texas. After the death of Lois Roden in November 1986 and the probate of her estate in January 1987, Howell attempted to gain control of Mount Carmel Center by force. George Roden had dug up the casket of Anna Hughes from the Davidian cemetery and had challenged Howell to a resurrection contest to prove who was the rightful heir to the leadership. Howell instead went to the police and claimed Roden was guilty of corpse abuse, but the county prosecutors refused to file charges without proof. On November 3, 1987, Howell and 7 armed companions tried to get into the Mount Carmel Chapel, intending to photograph the body in the casket as incriminating evidence. Roden was informed of the interlopers and opened fire. The sheriff's department responded about 20 minutes into the gunfight, during which Roden had been wounded. Sheriff Harwell got Howell on the phone and told him to stop shooting and surrender. Howell and his companions, dubbed the Rodenville Eight by the media, were tried for attempted murder on April 12, 1988. 7 were acquitted, and the jury hung on Howell's verdict. The county prosecutors did not press the case further. Even with all the effort to bring the casket to court, the standing judge refused to use it as evidence for the case. Judge Herman Fitz ruled that the courtroom is no place for a casket, when defense attorney Gary Coker requested it being used as evidence for the case. 8 men, including 6 of the defendants, were forced to carry the casket away from the courthouse and down the street to a van awaiting the body. In response to questions about the body, Roden admitted to attempting to resurrect Hughes on 3 occasions. While waiting for the trial, Roden was put in jail under contempt of court charges because of his use of foul language in some court pleadings. He threatened the Texas court with sexually transmitted diseases if the court ruled in Howell's favor. Alongside these charges, Roden was jailed for 6 months for legal motions he filed with explicit language. Roden faced 90 days in jail for living on the property after being ordered to neither live on the property nor call himself the leader of the religious group in a 1979 case. Soon after the trial, several of Howell's followers moved from their headquarters in Palestine, Texas, back to Mount Carmel. In mid-1989, Roden used an axe to kill a Davidian named Wayman Dale Adair, who visited him to discuss Adair's alleged vision of being God's chosen Messiah. He was found guilty under an insanity defense and was committed to a mental hospital. Shortly after Roden's commitment, Howell raised money to pay off all the back taxes on Mount Carmel, owed by Roden, and took legal control of the property. After these legal proceedings, it was noted in a 90-minute interview by the Davidians' attorney Douglas Wayne Martin that the religious group had been back and forth to court since 1955. On August 5, 1989, Howell released the, quote, New Light audio tape, in which he said that God told him to procreate with the women in the group to establish a house of David, of his special people. This involved separating married couples in the group who had to agree that only he could have sexual relations with the wives, while the men should observe celibacy. Howell also said that God had told him to start building an army for God, to prepare for the end days, and a salvation for his followers. Howell filed a petition in the California State Superior Court in Pomona on May 15, 1990, to legally change his name, quote, for publicity and business purposes, end quote, to David Koresh. On August 28th, he was granted the petition. By 1992, most of the land belonging to the group had been sold except for a core 77 acres. Most of the buildings had been removed, or were being salvaged for construction materials, to convert much of the main chapel and a tall water tank into apartments for the resident members of the group. Many of the members of the group had been involved in the Davidians for a few generations, and many had large families. On February 27, 1993, the Waco Tribune-Herald began publishing, quote, The Sinful Messiah, end quote, a series of articles by Mark England and Darlene McCormick, who reported allegations that Koresh had physically abused children in the compound and had committed statutory rape by taking multiple underage brides. Koresh was also said to advocate polygamy for himself and declared himself married to several female residents of the small community. The paper claimed that Koresh had announced he was entitled to at least 140 wives, and that he was entitled to claim any of the women in the group as his, that he had fathered at least a dozen children, and that some of these mothers became brides as young as 12 or 13 years old. In addition to allegations of sexual abuse and misconduct, Koresh and his followers were suspected of stockpiling illegal weapons. In May 1992, Chief Deputy Daniel Weyenberg of the McLennan County Sheriff's Department called the ATF to notify them that his office had been contacted by a local UPS representative concerned about a report by a local driver. The UPS driver said a package had broken open on delivery to the Branch Davidian residence, revealing at least half a dozen grenades. He also noted that the compound had been receiving packages from an arms dealer for months. On June 9th, the ATF opened a formal investigation, and a week later it was classified as sensitive, quote, thereby calling for a high degree of oversight, end quote, from both Houston and headquarters. The documentary Inside Waco claims that the investigation started when in 1992 the ATF became concerned over reports of automatic gunfire coming from the Carmel compound. On July 30th, ATF agents David Aguilera and Skinner visited the Branch Davidians' gun dealer, Henry McMahon, who tried to get them to talk with Koresh on the phone. Koresh offered to let the ATF inspect the Branch Davidians' weapons and paperwork, and asked to speak with Aguilera, but Aguilera declined. Sheriff Harwell told reporters regarding law enforcement talking with Koresh, quote, just go out and talk to them. What's wrong with notifying them? End quote. The ATF began surveillance from a house across the road from the compound several months before the siege. Their cover was noticeably poor. The college students were in their 30s, had new cars, were not registered at the local schools, and did not keep a schedule that would have fit any legitimate employment, or classes. The investigation included sending in an undercover agent, Robert Rodriguez, whose identity Koresh learned, though he chose not to reveal that fact until the day of the raid. The ATF used an affidavit filed by Special Agent David Aguilera to obtain the search and arrest warrant that led to the Waco siege. The official filing date of this affidavit was February 25, 1993. Allegedly, the initial investigation began in June 1992 when a postal worker informed a sheriff of McLennan County that he believed he had been delivering explosives to the ammo and gun store owned and operated by the Branch Davidians. This store, named the Mag Bag, had been identified by the said postal worker as suspicious in deliveries. The postal worker continued deliveries to Mount Carmel Center and reported seeing occupied observation posts. In the affidavit, it states he believed there were armed personnel in these observation posts. The McLennan County Sheriff was notified in May and June of that year of 2 cases of inert grenades, black gunpowder, 90 pounds of powdered aluminum, and 30 to 40 cardboard tubes. Aguilera also noted that the Mag Bag had purchased several AR-15 M16 part kits. Some of the sellers of these kits were currently under investigation by the ATF, and the ATF had seized illegal weapons from their previous customers. Aguilera stated, quote, "I have been involved in many cases where defendants, following a relatively simple process, convert AR-15 semi-automatic rifles to fully automatic rifles of the nature of the M16, end quote, to justify the ATF's involvement in the case." In November 1992, a local farmer, Ben Hayes, and his wife, Cameron Krajewski, reported to the sheriff that he had heard machine gun fire. Quote, "By the sound of it," end quote, he said. Quote, "It was likely a .50 caliber machine gun and multiple M16s, end quote. This farmer claimed he was very familiar with machine guns, having done a tour overseas in the U.S. Army. The affidavit closed with Aguilera verifying the story via interviews made with associated parties and gun shops from which the Mag Bag purchased items. Among these items were over 45 AR-15 upper receivers and 5 M16 upper receivers, which Aguilera annotated, quote, "These kits contain all parts of an M16 except for the lower receiver unit, which is the firearm by law definition," end quote, admitting that neither the noise complaints nor the items ordered were necessarily illegal. Using the affidavit filed by Aguilera that alleged that the Davidians had violated federal law, the ATF obtained search and arrest warrants for Koresh and specific followers on weapons charges, citing the many firearms they had accumulated. The search warrant commanded a search, quote, "on or before February 28, 1993, end quote, in the daytime between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. The ATF made a claim that Koresh was possibly operating a meth lab to establish a drug nexus and obtain military assets under the war on drugs. Although the ATF's investigation, quote, "focused on firearm violations, not on illegal drugs," end quote, the ATF requested assistance from the DEA and the United States Department of Defense, citing a drug connection based on 1. A recent delivery to the compound of chemicals, instruments, and glassware, 2. A written testimony from a former compound resident alleging, quote, "Howell had told him that drug trafficking was a desirable way to raise money," end quote, and 3. Several current residents who had prior drug involvement. Number 4. 2 former residents who were incarcerated for drug trafficking crimes, and 5. National Guard overflights thermal images showing a hot spot inside the compound, possibly indicating a methamphetamine laboratory. Although the original request for assistance was initially approved, the commander of the Special Forces Detachment questioned the request, and the ATF obtained only a training site at Fort Hood, Texas, from February 25th to February 27th, with safety inspections for the training lanes, and was given only medical and communications training and equipment. The ATF attempted to execute their search warrant on Sunday morning, February 28, 1993. The local sheriff, in audio tapes broadcast after the incident, said he was not appraised of the raid, despite being informed that the Branch Davidians knew a raid was coming. The ATF commander ordered that it go ahead, even though their plan depended on reaching the compound without the Branch Davidians being armed and prepared. Any advantage of surprise was lost when a KWTX TV reporter, who had been tipped off about the raid, asked for directions from a U.S. Postal Service mail carrier, who was coincidentally Koresh's brother-in-law. Koresh then told undercover ATF agent Robert Rodriguez that they knew a raid was imminent. Rodriguez had infiltrated the Branch Davidians and was astonished to find that his cover had been blown. The agent made an excuse and left the compound. When asked later what the Branch Davidians had been doing when he had left, Rodriguez replied, quote, "They were praying." Branch Davidian survivors have written that Koresh ordered select male followers to begin arming and taking up defensive positions, while the women and children were told to take cover in their rooms. Koresh told them he would try to speak to the agents, and what happened next would depend on the agents' intentions. The ATF arrived at 9:45 a.m. in a convoy of civilian vehicles containing uniformed personnel in SWAT-style tactical gear. ATF agents claimed that they had heard shots coming from within the compound, while Branch Davidian survivors claimed that the first shots came from the ATF agents outside. A suggested reason may have been an accidental discharge of a weapon, possibly by an ATF agent, causing the ATF to respond with fire from automatic weapons. Other reports claim the first shots were fired by the ATF dog team, sent to kill the dogs in the Branch Davidian kennel. 3 helicopters of the Army National Guard were used as an aerial distraction, and all took incoming fire. During the first shots, Koresh was wounded, shot in the hand and stomach. Within a minute of the raid's start, Branch Davidian Wayne Martin called emergency services, pleading for them to stop shooting. Martin asked for a ceasefire, and audio tapes record him saying, quote, "Here they come again," and, quote, "That's them shooting, that's not us." The first ATF casualty was an agent who had made it to the west side of the building before he was wounded. Agents quickly took cover and fired at the buildings while the helicopters began their diversion and swept in low over the complex, 350 feet away from the building. The Branch Davidians fired on the helicopters and hit them, although none of the crew members were injured. In response, the helicopter pilots chose to pull away from the compound and land. On the east side of the compound, agents brought out 2 ladders and set them against the side of the building. They then climbed onto the roof to secure it to reach Koresh's room and the location where they believed weapons were stored. On the west slope of the roof, 3 agents reached Koresh's window and were crouching beside it when they came under fire. 1 agent was killed and another wounded. The 3rd agent clambered over the peak of the roof and joined other agents attempting to enter the armory. The window was smashed, a flashbang stun grenade was thrown in, and 3 agents entered the armory. When another tried to follow them, a hail of bullets penetrated the wall and wounded him, but he was able to reach a ladder and slide to safety. An agent fired his shotgun at Branch Davidians until he was hit in the head by return fire and killed. Inside the armory, the agents killed a Branch Davidian and discovered a cache of weapons, but subsequently came under heavy fire. 2 were wounded. As they escaped, the 3rd agent laid down covering fire, killing a Branch Davidian. As he made his escape, he hit his head on a wooden support beam and fell off the roof, but survived. An agent outside provided them with covering fire but was shot by a Branch Davidian and killed instantly. Dozens of ATF agents took cover, many behind Branch Davidian vehicles, and exchanged fire with the Branch Davidians. The number of ATF wounded increased, and an agent was killed by gunfire from the compound as agents were firing at a Branch Davidian perched on top of the water tower.
Faceless, we were born for greatness. songs and we just hold on, yeah. So if you're running, stop running. One life, one chance, start living. Sing it louder just to let the world know. No, we're not nameless, we're not faceless, we were born for greatness. We're not nameless, we're not faceless, we were born for greatness. We're not nameless, we're not faceless, we were born for greatness. They say that I'm reckless, because I'm relentless. They spit on my face and crush on my name and taking my life in vengeance. Yeah, you could try and blame us and try and take what's sacred, but we're not nameless, we're not faceless, we were born for greatness. Somebody sound the alarm. A fire was set in the dark. It's time that you know. No, we're not nameless, we're not faceless, we were born for greatness. It doesn't matter if the world is gone mad, if we just hold on, if we just hold on, yeah. The sky is falling and the world is gone mad, and we sing our songs and we just hold on, yeah. So if you're running, stop running. One life, one chance, start living. Sing it louder just to let the world know. No, we're not nameless, we're not faceless, we were born for greatness. We're not nameless, we're not faceless, we were born for greatness. No, we're not nameless, we're not faceless, we were born for greatness. Somebody sound the alarm. It's time that you know. It doesn't matter if the world is gone mad, if we just hold on, if we just hold on, yeah. Sing it louder just to let the world know. No, we're not nameless, we're not faceless, we were born for greatness.